The alarm pierced through Sarah's apartment at 6:30 a.m., the same jarring sound that had yanked her from sleep for the past 8 years. She rolled over, her body heavy despite logging what her phone proudly displayed as 7 hours and 23 minutes of sleep. The exhaustion clung to her like a second skin, familiar and unwelcome. At 35, Sarah Chen had tried everything the wellness industry promised. Keto, intermittent fasting, HIIT workouts at 5 a.m., meditation apps that she'd open and close within minutes. Her bathroom cabinet looked like a supplement store, collagen powders, probiotics, adaptogens with names she couldn't pronounce. Yet here she was again, staring at her reflection in the Tokyo morning light, feeling like a stranger in her own body. The irony wasn't lost on her. She lived in Japan, surrounded by people who seemed to effortlessly maintain the vitality she desperately sought. Her elderly neighbors moved with quiet grace. Her co-workers stayed slim without obsessing over calories. And somehow everyone looked younger than their years. Meanwhile, Sarah felt like she was aging in fast forward, her American expat lifestyle a stark contrast to the rhythm around her. She shuffled to the kitchen, muscle memory guiding her to the coffee maker. Her small Tokyo apartment bore the hallmarks of her scattered attempts at wellness: a dusty yoga mat, half-empty protein shake containers, and a meditation cushion that served as a decorative pillow. On the counter sat her grandmother's ceramic rice bowl, the only inheritance she'd brought from San Francisco. Its simple blue and white pattern seemed to mock her elaborate meal prep containers filled with precisely measured portions of food she didn't enjoy. The rice bowl had been her grandmother's daily companion, weathered smooth by decades of use. Sarah remembered watching her grandmother eat slowly, deliberately, that same bowl cradled in weathered hands. Back then it seemed impossibly small. Now it looked almost quaint next to the oversized plates that filled her cupboards. Her phone buzzed with notifications, fitness app reminders, diet tracking alerts, sleep score analysis. The familiar anxiety crept in as she scrolled through the data, searching for clues about why she felt so disconnected from her own body. Every metric was optimized, yet nothing felt right. As she grabbed her train pass, Sarah caught sight of Mrs. Tanaka from 4B in the hallway. The 78-year-old woman moved with fluid precision, her posture straight, skin glowing with quiet health. She wore a simple cotton dress and carried herself with an energy that made Sarah feel ancient by comparison. "Good morning, Sarah-san," Mrs. Tanaka said with a warm smile. "You're looking tired again. Are you eating properly?" Sarah forced a smile back. "Just busy with work. You know how it is." Mrs. Tanaka's expression grew thoughtful. "In Japan, we say the body whispers before it screams. Perhaps it's time to listen more carefully." The words followed Sarah onto the crowded Yamanote line, where she stood pressed against strangers, scrolling through her phone to avoid the weight of her own thoughts. Around her, she noticed something she'd somehow missed in 3 years of this commute: how differently people carried themselves. The elderly man beside her sat in perfect stillness, breathing slowly, eyes closed but alert. A young mother fed her child from a small bento box, each piece carefully arranged, eaten without rush. Her American colleagues at the consulting firm would laugh if they knew she was taking life advice from an elderly neighbor. They lived by the same rules she'd always followed: push harder, sleep less, optimize everything. But as the train pulled into Shimbashi Station, Sarah found herself thinking about that ceramic bowl sitting on her counter and wondering what her grandmother had known that she'd forgotten. That evening, exhausted from another 14-hour day, Sarah stood in her kitchen staring at the rice bowl. For the first time in months, instead of reaching for her usual oversized dinner plate, she picked up the delicate ceramic piece. It felt almost fragile in her hands, impossibly small for what she'd planned to eat. Almost without thinking, she measured out a single serving of rice, watching it settle into the bowl's gentle curve. The portion looked tiny, almost ridiculous, but something about the ritual felt ancient and right. As she ate, using chopsticks instead of her usual fork, she found herself chewing more slowly, tasting flavors she'd been too rushed to notice before. If you've ever felt tired even after a full night of sleep, or frustrated with diets that don't last, tell us in the comments which part of this story feels familiar. And stay with us for the next chapters. The rice bowl experiment lasted exactly 3 days before Sarah's rational mind kicked in. Sitting in the break room at her consulting firm, she found herself defending portion sizes to her colleague Mike, who'd commented on her bird food lunch. "You're not eating enough to fuel your workouts," he said, unwrapping his convenience store sandwich. "No wonder you're always tired. You need more protein, more calories. Maybe try that new pre-workout I sent you." Sarah looked down at her small bento box. Rice, pickled vegetables, a piece of grilled fish, all nestled in compartments that suddenly felt inadequate. Mike's logic made sense. She'd been tracking her macros for years. She knew the formulas. Yet something nagged at her as she watched him scarf down his meal while checking emails. That weekend, she found herself in Shibuya's Tokyu Hands, overwhelmed by the selection of traditional Japanese kitchen items. She'd come looking for nothing in particular, just escaping the suffocating familiarity of her apartment. In the housewares section, surrounded by elegant ceramic pieces and bamboo tools, she felt like an intruder in someone else's life. A sales clerk, a woman perhaps her mother's age, approached with gentle curiosity. "Are you looking for something specific?" "I'm not sure," Sarah admitted. "I'm trying to eat differently. More like—" She gestured vaguely around the store. The woman smiled knowingly. "Ah, you want to understand Japanese eating. It's not about the tools, you know. It's about the relationship." She guided Sarah to a display of traditional dishes, small plates, delicate bowls, chopsticks of various weights and lengths. In Japan, we say harahachi-bu, eat until 80% full. But the real secret is the time. When you eat slowly, your body has time to tell you what it needs. Sarah picked up a set of ceramic bowls, each one smaller than what she was used to. "But don't you get hungry?" "Hungry?" The woman looked puzzled. "Why would I be hungry if I'm eating what my body asks for?" The question followed Sarah home, along with 3 small bowls and a set of wooden chopsticks. That evening, she experimented with dividing her usual dinner among the smaller dishes: rice in her grandmother's bowl, vegetables in one of the new ones, fish in another. The meal looked abundant, spread across multiple dishes, though the total volume was considerably less than her usual plate. What surprised her was how long it took to eat. The chopsticks forced a slower pace, each bite more deliberate. Halfway through, she felt something she hadn't experienced in years: actual satisfaction. Not the stuffed feeling she'd grown accustomed to, but a gentle fullness that felt like enough. Her phone buzzed with a notification from her fitness app. "Calorie goal not met. Consider adding a protein shake." She stared at the screen, then at her empty bowls, confusion washing over her. Every diet book, every trainer, every nutrition article had taught her to think in terms of numbers: calories in, calories out, macro percentages, optimal timing. But her body was telling her something different. For the first time in months, she felt satisfied without feeling heavy. The next morning brought another small revelation. She woke naturally at 6:15, 15 minutes before her alarm. The change was subtle but noticeable. Her sleep had felt deeper, less restless. Could eating differently really affect sleep? Her Western mind demanded scientific explanations, but her body simply felt better. At work, she found herself observing her Japanese colleagues more carefully. Yuki, from accounting, always ate her lunch slowly, often putting down her chopsticks between bites to chat with co-workers. Tanaka-san from finance never seemed to finish everything on his plate, leaving small amounts of rice or vegetables. These habits had seemed like quirks before, now they looked like wisdom, but doubt crept in during her evening video call with her sister in California. "You're not eating enough," Lisa said bluntly, squinting at Sarah through the laptop screen. "You look thin, but not in a good way. Are you sure this isn't just another diet phase?" Sarah tried to explain about the bowls, the slower pace, the unexpected satisfaction, but the words sounded flimsy across the digital distance. Lisa's concern was real, rooted in years of watching Sarah cycle through extreme restrictions and inevitable backlash. "Remember the juice cleanse disaster, the keto flu? I just don't want you to hurt yourself again." That night, Sarah sat in her small kitchen, the ceramic bowls arranged before her like a meditation. Her sister's words echoed alongside Mike's concerns and her own ingrained beliefs about what constituted enough. But as she prepared her simple dinner, rice, miso soup, steamed vegetables, she noticed something her rational mind couldn't dismiss. For the first time in months, she was looking forward to eating. Not because she was starving herself, but because the act had become pleasant again. The warm ceramic in her hands, the gentle clink of chopsticks, the way flavors emerged when she wasn't rushing, it felt like coming home to a part of herself she'd forgotten existed. 3 weeks into her bowl experiment, Sarah discovered something that made her question everything she thought she knew about her body. Her jeans, the ones that had been uncomfortably snug for months, were loose. Not dramatically, but enough that she noticed the difference when she sat down. She stood on her bathroom scale, expecting to see a significant drop that would explain the change. The number had barely moved, maybe 2 pounds, well within normal fluctuation. But something was different. Her face looked less puffy in the morning. The constant bloating that had plagued her for years had quietly disappeared. Most surprisingly, her energy felt more stable throughout the day. The transformation was so subtle that she almost missed it entirely. No dramatic before and after photos, no impressive weight loss numbers to share on social media, just a quiet shift in how she moved through her days in Tokyo. Dr. Yamamoto, her physician at Tokyo Medical Center, seemed puzzled during her routine checkup. "Your blood pressure has improved," she said, reviewing the charts, "and your inflammatory markers are down. Have you been taking any new medications?" Sarah shook her head. "Just eating differently." How differently? Sarah felt foolish explaining about the small bowls and slower eating to a medical professional. "I've been using smaller portions, taking more time with meals, following some traditional Japanese eating habits." Dr. Yamamoto's expression shifted from clinical curiosity to something warmer. "Ah, you mean eating like we actually do here, not like the restaurants for foreigners. That makes sense. When you eat slowly, your vagus nerve has time to signal satiety. And smaller portions mean less stress on your digestive system." She leaned forward slightly. "You know, my grandmother always said that Western visitors eat like they're afraid the food will disappear. Always rushing, always taking more than they need. The body doesn't know what to do with that kind of urgency." That evening, Sarah called her friend Emma back in San Francisco to share the news about her improved blood work. "That's great, but have you tried adding some serious cardio?" Emma asked, her voice crackling through the international connection. "I just started this new HIIT program. 45 minutes, 6 days a week. You're drenching in sweat, but the results are insane." Sarah looked out her apartment window at the small park below, where elderly residents moved through their morning Tai Chi routine in perfect synchronization. "I've actually been walking more. Just around the neighborhood, nothing intense." "Walking?" Emma's disappointment was audible. "That's not really exercise, though. You need to get your heart rate up, burn some serious calories. Walking is just maintenance." After hanging up, Sarah felt the familiar tug of self-doubt. Everyone she knew back home was optimizing, grinding, pushing harder. Her approach felt almost lazy in comparison. Yet her body was responding in ways that years of intense workouts hadn't achieved. The internal conflict came to a head when Mike invited her to join his new CrossFit gym. "You've lost some weight, but you need to build muscle now," he insisted over lunch. "You can't just eat less and expect to transform your body. You need to challenge yourself." Sarah watched him gulp down his protein shake between bites of his oversized salmon bowl. His logic was familiar, rooted in the same mentality that had driven her through years of punishing workouts and restrictive diets. The voice that said more was always better, that suffering was the price of results. But that evening, as she prepared her dinner in her grandmother's bowl, she realized something profound had shifted. For the first time in years, she wasn't fighting her body. She wasn't forcing, pushing, or punishing. She was simply listening. The rice settled into the bowl's familiar curve. The miso soup steamed gently in its lacquered container. She ate slowly, putting down her chopsticks between bites, letting conversation with herself replace the usual Netflix distraction. Halfway through the meal, she felt satisfied. Not stuffed, not deprived, just enough. Her body had whispered its contentment, and for once she had heard it clearly. Her phone buzzed with another fitness app notification. "You're behind on this week's calorie burn goal." She looked at the message, then at her peaceful table setting, and made a decision that felt both radical and inevitable. She deleted the app. Then she deleted the calorie tracking app, the macro counter, the sleep optimizer, and the workout scheduler that had been dictating her days for years. With each deletion, she felt lighter, as if removing digital weight from her life. Later that night, she found herself writing in a journal she'd abandoned months ago. What if the secret isn't doing more, but doing less? What if my body has been trying to tell me something, and I've been too busy optimizing to listen? Would you rather force yourself with willpower or redesign your environment and habits like this character is learning to do? Comment which path makes more sense to you and share this episode with someone who needs a gentler approach to change. The real test came during Golden Week, when Sarah's company scheduled a mandatory team retreat in Hakone. 3 days of meetings, group dinners, and networking events, exactly the kind of environment where her new eating rhythm would be challenged. She packed her grandmother's rice bowl, wrapping it carefully in a small furoshiki cloth, feeling slightly ridiculous. But as she watched her colleagues load up their suitcases with protein bars, meal replacement shakes, and supplement packs, she realized how different her relationship with food had become. The retreat's first dinner was a traditional kaiseki meal, served in a ryokan overlooking Lake Ashi. Multiple small courses arrived in sequence: seasonal vegetables, delicate fish preparations, tiny portions of rice. Sarah watched her American colleagues struggle with the pacing, some discreetly pulling out granola bars between courses. Mike leaned over, whispering, "This is barely enough for an appetizer. I'm hitting the convenience store after this." But Sarah found herself completely satisfied by the meal's end. Each small dish had been perfectly portioned, building to a sense of fullness that felt natural rather than forced. She realized she'd been chewing slowly, pausing between courses, actually tasting the food instead of just consuming it. The revelation came the next morning when she woke without her usual alarm, feeling rested despite the unfamiliar futon. Her roommate, Jennifer from the Singapore office, was already awake, scrolling through her phone. "How do you sleep on these things?" Jennifer complained, gesturing at the firm mattress. "My back is killing me, and I'm starving." "I only ate like 500 calories yesterday." Sarah stretched, surprised by how comfortable the traditional bedding felt. "The dinner was actually really filling for me." Jennifer stared at her with disbelief. "You ate the same tiny portions I did. There's no way that was enough food for an active person." But Sarah's body told a different story. She felt energized, clear-headed, satisfied. Not the artificial energy of caffeine and protein bars, but a stable vitality that seemed to come from within. During the morning team-building session, she found herself paying attention to the Japanese staff members. They moved differently than her Western colleagues, more deliberately, with less frantic energy. During breaks, they sipped tea rather than chugging coffee, sat quietly rather than checking phones constantly. Nakamura-san, the retreat facilitator, noticed her observation. "You seem more relaxed than last year, Sarah-san. Less, how do you say, wound up?" The comment surprised her. She hadn't realized the change was visible to others. That evening brought the real challenge, an all-you-can-eat barbecue dinner with unlimited beer. Her colleagues descended on the buffet with enthusiastic appetite, loading their plates high and returning multiple times. The familiar pressure to get your money's worth tugged at Sarah's consciousness. She took her grandmother's bowl from her bag, earning curious looks from her teammates. Carefully, she selected small portions of grilled vegetables, a modest piece of fish, some rice. The bowl looked elegant despite the casual setting, each element thoughtfully arranged. "That's all you're eating?" asked David from the London office. "You know it's unlimited, right?" Sarah smiled, feeling unexpectedly calm. "I think this is enough for me." She ate slowly, putting her chopsticks down between bites, engaging in actual conversation rather than mindless consumption. Halfway through her single serving, she felt the gentle signal her body had been teaching her to recognize, satisfaction without excess. Around the table, her colleagues continued eating long past fullness, driven by opportunity rather than hunger. She watched Mike return to the buffet for his fourth plate, complaining about feeling stuffed, but somehow not satisfied. Jennifer methodically worked through a mountain of protein, calculating macros aloud. For the first time, Sarah felt genuinely sorry for them. Not superior, but sad that they seemed trapped in the same cycle of force and deprivation that had dominated her own life for so long. Later that night, she sat by the ryokan's small garden, her grandmother's bowl resting in her hands. The ceramic had grown warm from the evening's use, smooth and comforting against her palms. She thought about all the meals this bowl had witnessed, her grandmother's simple dinners, shared in quiet contentment. Her phone buzzed with a text from Lisa. "How's the work retreat? Eating okay?" Sarah looked down at the bowl, then typed back, "Learning to eat like Grandma did. Finally, starting to make sense." 3 dots appeared and disappeared several times before Lisa's response came. "That sounds actually really nice." The next morning, Sarah woke before sunrise, drawn to the ryokan's small shrine overlooking the lake. As she sat in the pre-dawn quiet, she realized something fundamental had shifted. She no longer feared food, no longer approached meals as battles to be won or challenges to be optimized. The ceramic bowl had become more than just a portion guide. It was a bridge to a different way of being. Each meal had become a small meditation, each bite a moment of presence. Food had transformed from an enemy to be controlled into a gentle teacher, showing her what enough actually felt like. 6 months after her first meal with the rice bowl, Sarah sat in Dr. Yamamoto's office, staring at her latest lab results. The numbers told a story her rational mind was still struggling to process. "Your inflammatory markers are now in the optimal range," Dr. Yamamoto said, pointing to the chart. "Your blood sugar stability has improved significantly, and your cortisol levels suggest much better stress management. What exactly have you been doing?" Sarah felt almost embarrassed to answer. "Honestly, just eating more slowly, using smaller portions. Nothing dramatic." Dr. Yamamoto set down the papers and leaned back in her chair. "You know, in medical school in the United States, they taught me to look for complex solutions, medications, procedures, intensive interventions. But my grandmother, who lived to be 98, always said that health is like water. It finds the most natural path when you stop forcing it." She gestured to the results. "What you've discovered isn't really Japanese eating habits. It's just eating like humans did for thousands of years before food became a battlefield." The word battlefield hit Sarah like a revelation. That's exactly what meals had been for her, strategic encounters requiring tactics, willpower, victory, or defeat. She thought about her apartment back in San Francisco, where the kitchen had resembled a laboratory, digital scales, macro calculators, supplement schedules, meal prep containers lined up like ammunition. The secret you've found, Dr. Yamamoto continued, isn't about Japanese culture specifically. It's about listening to your body's actual signals instead of overriding them with your mind's anxiety. That evening, Sarah video-called her sister Lisa, who'd been following her journey with a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. "You look different," Lisa said immediately. "Not just thinner, calmer. Like you're not fighting yourself anymore." Sarah glanced at her grandmother's rice bowl, sitting clean and ready for dinner on her counter. "I think I finally understand what Grandma was trying to show us. Remember how she used to eat? Slowly. Always slowly," Lisa said thoughtfully. "And she never seemed to worry about food, but she never overate either. She had this relationship with eating that I never understood. It wasn't about rules or restriction. It was just natural." Lisa was quiet for a moment. "I've been thinking about getting one of those bowls, the ones like Grandma's." That night, Sarah reflected on the unexpected journey. She'd started with a simple ceramic bowl, thinking she was experimenting with portion control. But somewhere along the way, she'd stumbled onto something much deeper, a complete rewiring of her relationship with her own body. The change hadn't been dramatic or Instagram-worthy, no remarkable before and after photos, no incredible weight loss story. Just a gradual return to something that felt ancient and obvious, eating when hungry, stopping when satisfied, moving naturally throughout the day. Her clothes fit better, but more importantly they felt comfortable. Her energy was stable rather than spiking and crashing. Sleep came naturally instead of requiring elaborate rituals and supplements. The constant mental chatter about food choices had quieted to a whisper, but the most profound shift was psychological. She no longer approached each meal as a test of willpower or a potential failure. Food had become neutral again, nourishment rather than nemesis. The hypervigilance around eating that had colored her thoughts for years had simply evaporated. She realized that all her previous diet attempts had been about imposing external rules on her body's natural wisdom, counting, measuring, restricting, forcing. The rice bowl had taught her the opposite, how to hear what her body was actually saying underneath all the noise. Mike had stopped inviting her to new workout classes, clearly baffled by her transformation without apparent effort. Emma continued sending links to the latest fitness trends, which Sarah read with detached curiosity rather than compulsive interest. Her American friends seemed trapped in the same cycle of optimization and exhaustion she'd finally stepped away from. But her Japanese neighbors had started treating her differently. Mrs. Tanaka now smiled and nodded approvingly when they passed in the hallway. The elderly man at the local market began recommending seasonal vegetables with the familiarity reserved for long-time customers. She'd somehow crossed an invisible threshold, joining a quieter way of living that had been hiding in plain sight. As she prepared dinner that night, spooning rice into the familiar bowl, Sarah understood that she hadn't discovered Japanese eating habits at all. She'd rediscovered her own body's natural intelligence, the wisdom that had been there all along, waiting patiently beneath years of diet culture noise. The ceramic felt warm in her hands, connecting her to countless generations of people who'd eaten simply, slowly, peacefully. This wasn't a hack or a system or an optimization strategy. It was just coming home to herself. 2 years later, Sarah stood in her new apartment kitchen in Kyoto, training her replacement at the Tokyo office. Anna, a bright 28-year-old from Chicago, had arrived with the same frantic energy Sarah remembered from her own early days in Japan. "I've been here 3 weeks, and I've already gained weight," Anna confessed, pulling at her waistband. "I thought Japanese food was supposed to be healthy, but I'm constantly hungry. I've been eating at least twice what I normally do." Sarah smiled, recognizing her former self in Anna's frustration. She pulled 2 items from her cabinet, her grandmother's rice bowl and a second one she'd found at a ceramic shop in Shigaraki, its simple blue glaze echoing the original. "Try eating your next meal from this," Sarah suggested, offering the newer bowl. "And use these chopsticks instead of a fork. See what happens." Anna looked skeptical. "It's so small, there's no way that's enough food for a full meal. Just trust the process and eat slowly. Put the chopsticks down between bites." 3 days later, Anna called, her voice filled with confusion and wonder. "I don't understand what's happening. I'm eating less than half what I was before, but I'm not hungry, and I'm sleeping better. How is that possible?" Sarah laughed, remembering asking Dr. Yamamoto the same question. "Your body is just remembering how to eat naturally. You were probably overeating from anxiety about the new job, the culture change, the stress of being in a foreign country. But everyone told me I needed to eat more protein, more calories, especially when I'm stressed." "Everyone was wrong," Sarah said gently. "At least for your body, in your situation." She looked at her own reflection in the kitchen window, surprised as always by the calm person looking back. The transformation had been so gradual that she sometimes forgot how different things used to be. The constant food anxiety, the exhausting cycles of restriction and excess, the feeling of being trapped in a body that seemed to work against her, all of it had faded like a half-remembered dream. Her apartment now felt peaceful in a way that had nothing to do with interior design. The kitchen held just what she needed: a few good knives, simple plates and bowls, basic tools for preparing real food. No gadgets promising to revolutionize her health, no shelves lined with supplements and protein powders. Her mother had visited from California the previous month, initially worried that Sarah was becoming too Japanese, whatever that meant. "You're so zen now," her mother had said, watching Sarah prepare dinner with unhurried precision. "It's like you're a completely different person." "I'm the same person," Sarah had replied, arranging vegetables in the ceramic bowls. "I'm just not fighting myself anymore." By the end of the week, her mother had asked for the name of the pottery shop where Sarah bought her dishes. Dr. Yamamoto had been right. The secret had never been specifically Japanese. It was simply human. All over the world, in cultures that hadn't been touched by diet industry messaging, people ate naturally, stopping when satisfied, moving regularly, sleeping when tired. The wisdom wasn't exotic or complex. It was basic mammalian intelligence that modern life had somehow trained her to ignore. Sarah's dating life had changed too, though in ways she hadn't expected. She found herself uninterested in the gym-obsessed expatriate scene, the weekend warriors, comparing workout routines and supplement stacks. Instead, she was drawn to people who moved through life with similar ease, often Japanese friends who'd grown up with the rhythms she'd had to relearn as an adult. Kenji, the ceramics teacher she'd been dating for 6 months, had noticed her grandmother's bowl on their second dinner together. "That's beautiful," he'd said, examining the worn ceramic with professional interest. "Old, but well cared for. It has a good feeling." When she'd told him about its role in her transformation, he'd nodded thoughtfully. "Of course, when you eat from something beautiful, made by hand, you naturally slow down. The bowl teaches you how to eat." Now, as she prepared dinner for Anna's visit, Sarah reflected on how completely her relationship with food had transformed. Meals had become meditative pauses in busy days rather than stressful calculations. Her body had found its natural weight and stayed there effortlessly. Energy remained stable throughout long workdays. Sleep came easily in her tatami mat bedroom. But perhaps most importantly, the constant mental chatter about food, weight, and body image had quieted to a whisper. She rarely thought about eating when she wasn't hungry, rarely worried about whether she'd had enough protein or too many carbs. Her mind was free to focus on work, relationships, the small pleasures of daily life in Kyoto. Anna arrived carrying a bag from a health food store full of protein bars and meal replacement shakes. I brought some backup food, just in case that bowl thing doesn't work for me. Sarah set out their simple dinner. Rice in the ceramic bowls, miso soup, grilled fish, pickled vegetables, and watched Anna's initial skepticism give way to focused attention as she ate slowly with chopsticks. Halfway through the meal, Anna set down her utensils and looked surprised. I think I'm satisfied, but there's still food left. Then stop eating, Sarah said simply. But I paid for it, and I don't want to be hungry later. Sarah remembered the exact same thoughts, the ingrained fear of waste, competing with an even deeper fear of deprivation. Your body is telling you it's had enough. Try trusting that signal. As they cleared the dishes, Anna helping to wash the ceramic bowls with careful attention, Sarah realized how far she'd traveled from her old life in Tokyo. Not geographically, but internally. The frantic, exhausted woman who'd stood in her kitchen 3 years ago, staring at her grandmother's bowl in desperation, felt like a character from someone else's story. If this story reminded you that real transformation comes from small habits repeated over time, not from overnight fixes, subscribe to the channel, tell us which country you watch from, and invite someone to start this journey with you in the next story.